So I was showing this map to my boyfriend, and he had noticed some stuff, and I noticed some stuff. So this is a nitpick compilation of everything we've noticed in this map that really, really kind of sort of upsets us. So you don't need to take this seriously. This is just some things I, as a native New Yorker, and my boyfriend, also as a native New Yorker, have noticed with this map. So take it with a grain of salt, because I know Overwatch takes place in the future, but still, inconsistencies. Okay, so here we have the attacker spawn. This would be a real restaurant you would see in New York, especially this area. But it would be like $5 million per slice. Crosswalks and holographics are really interesting and cool. I like them. Um, buildings change, so I'm not gonna nitpick into any of these. I will, however, nitpick, nit, nitpick this sign. As you see, it says Uptown and the Bronx. But it's blue. Now, in New York City, there are three blue lines actually. The A, C, and E. And while they do go to Uptown Manhattan that way, they don't actually go towards the Bronx. The E goes to Queens, and the A and C end in Manhattan. Ice Crown Heights, I'm just going to assume Crown Heights got renamed. Uh, the only thing that is correct here is the 4 being its correct color. The 3 is usually red. The A and C, again, are meant to be blue. Continuing on, I don't know what this train is. It looks like it's some form of commuter rail train, but it's also a weird subway car. And I say subway car because it doesn't have the commuter rail seat. It has subway car seats and also the standing handles. You don't usually stand on commuter rail, but I think there's a sign saying exactly what this train is. Not mentioned, actually. We don't have any subway lines that go above ground in Midtown. So, again, we can just assume the infrastructure was built, but it doesn't exist, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure. Here we have an unlabeled bus shelter. It just says it's an NYC MTA bus stop, but we don't see which route it belongs to. This is 40th and Union, so if that's 2nd Avenue, this would be like 3rd or Park Avenue. This would be like 3rd or Park. There's no buses that run north of Park Avenue, but there are some express routes that do run along it, like on around 42nd. But this would not be here. These taxis have always bothered me because they say New York taxi. They wouldn't say that in real life. They would just say taxi because they're already in New York. Now, obviously, there are certain taxis that will specify their location. Like, instead of New York, it would say, like, LaGuardia or JFK or Newark. Like, the airports it will transport you to. So, yeah. This fire truck says NYFD. It should say FDNY. The fire trucks in New York all say FDNY, not NYFD. And this is a little nitpick, but this is also irritating. Here we have a fire station. Now, there are no fire stations on 40th, 42nd, 43rd. There are no fire stations there. So, obviously, we can just assume that because this takes place in the future, they just built one here for the sake of simplicity. So, yeah. Moving on, we go through here. I actually don't know what this is. This is a lot of construction. That's fine. So now we are on Union and 42nd. There's not really much going on here. No. Oh, right, the Midtown Tunnel. This tunnel is irritating as hell, actually. Because the tunnel is, like, directly in front of Grand Central Station. Like, directly in front of it. And if you play Overwatch, you know, well, I'm about to show you. Grand Central is over here. So Midtown Tunnel would, like, go down a couple of blocks and then, like, be over there. We'll get to this area soon, though. But the tunnel is in the wrong location. And the subways are inconsistent, as we can see on the outside. It says R. First of all, the R doesn't even stop over here. It's over on Broadway. And secondly, when you go inside, it no longer says R, but instead says Queens and Staten Island, which is the three red colors. Usually the three red colors would be the 1, 2, and 3 lines, which are on the west side of Manhattan and not the east. Okay. And more importantly, though, we don't have any routes that go to Staten Island. There's the Staten Island Railway, but it doesn't connect to mainline New York. And I guess in the future, we can say, you know, that they did extend it over to Staten Island, but the MTA would never do that. The MTA would never do that. But yeah. So, nitpick again, but this bothers me, how it's so wrong. The tunnel, like I said, in the wrong spot. Here we have a transit museum. Now, the transit museum is usually inside. Well, this is actually the transit museum annex, which would be inside there, usually. Here we have, like, little trains and stuff, which they do sell. Not these particular kinds. And also we have a taxi. This wouldn't really mean anything. And it wouldn't even be here either. Historical buses are usually kept inside of their own usual depot. They have a dedicated maintenance facility in Manhattan. But they're never put out when there's no special event going on. So this bus is either here for a showcase or it's just here to be here. And also, this bus has no doors for you to get onto. According to the colors, I would assume this is like an MTA bus. Which I know damn well it's not. It might be an older bus because it says Manhattan Future Motor. But then it has, like, the futuristic wheels. And there's no doors for you to get on either. So this bus is, like, actually, like, unrideable in every sense of the word. Again, another bus stop. Another unlabeled bus stop. As the sign just says, no parking anytime. So the way it works usually is that the Midtown Tunnel would be, like, right here. And all your taxis would be on top of it. Because they're dropping people off, like, to and from the terminal. Because it is a pretty hefty rail terminal. Having Long Island Railroad and Metro North. So a lot of commuters... a lot of people, and also the subway. So it would be here, and all your taxis would be up there. The only bus you really do have would be if, I think this is 42nd right here. I don't know, this layout is a little confusing. So this might be 42nd right here, and you would have your M42 bus along 42nd and not on the tunnel, so there is a distinction. So I'm guessing this bus stop here is for the M42. But then where's the bus stop for the other side? They didn't think about that. Okay, I got I'm going into the terminal. There, this does not exist outside the terminal. Obviously, you can just say, you know, they added it in the future because you know this takes place in the future. But in real life, you go and this is not there. So you have your Grand Central clock. Everyone knows what this is. It's like so. This is like the thing everyone knows. However, it is modeled incorrectly. So, yeah, that's fun. They modeled this incorrectly. I'll have a picture of the actual thing on screen. I'm guessing what this is supposed to be is if this wasn't like a room for you to like flank in, this would be where the ticket offices are, I believe, judging by the windows. This would be where the ticket offices are, but however, in game, it is a flank route. Up here, this is where the Apple store for Grand Central would be, like right here. In real life, there's like a little Apple sign, like either right here or right here. And you would go here and Apple store. However, this is not in game, and I don't think Apple would be too happy about that. Hyperloop, we'll get to that in a second. So obviously, they had to change the layout of Grand Central to make it like fit into the game, but it is a little odd. So these exit signs make very little sense because of the way it works. These clearly say they go to a certain track, however, there are no tracks. This is a maintenance area. These are all misleading as when it says track here, there should be tracks here. And there are not. And also, as pointed out by me, as pointed out to me by someone else, they all say track, either track 13 or track 14. So Mercury 2 Interstate seems like something that would be akin to Amtrak services, which I find interesting because if they were the equivalent of Amtrak, they would not be here. Amtrak trains, which are the federally owned railroad company, those terminate over at Penn Station on the opposite side of Manhattan at Penn State at 34th Street, Penn Station. At Mahoyan, God, I can never say it. I'm just gonna type it on screen. And what is really interesting about that is that because these trains are supposed to be that, we can just say that the MTA or even the US government put the extension to Grand Central, but in real life, these commuter trains would be on the opposite side if they aren't going upstate or Long Island. So that's fun. Hyperloop line, like I said, they clearly go to places not upstate. Now, I know these are most likely references for other Overwatch match, but I do wish they did incorporate, you know, like Metro North or Long Island Railroad trains in here. Now, I know at the time the map itself dropped, Long Island Railroad was not actually incorporated into Grand Central, as East Side Access was like during COVID, and this map was made 2016 when the game dropped. So if they even just had like Metro North, you know, something like Albany or Poughkeepsie, or even like Connecticut, like New Haven and Danbury on these screens, like at least just one mention of Metro North Railroad, which actually is not mentioned on any of these signs. It just says Grand Central Terminal to all trains. However, this tells you to go directly downstairs to the 7, 4, 5, and 6, which, while these are all accurate, even in colors and numbering, they forgot a line, which would be the 42nd Street Shuttle, which would terminate here. And again, if you follow the signs, you do not get to any of those trains. Obviously it tells you to enter here. I'm guessing this is also a ticket booth or some sort of store. Now it tells you to go here to access the 4, 5, 6, or whatever. However, you do not. This is just an exit sign. This is a restaurant, which would actually be in the Grand Central Terminal dining concourse, which would be downstairs. Speaking of the dining hall, there are no signs pointing to the dining hall, or even the upper and lower concourses. Now, obviously, future, it could be safe to assume that they just full on remove those concourses, which would be a terrible idea because now you just limited the capacity of the terminal. But also, at the same time, in this universe, it also seems Metro North doesn't exist, East Side Access never happened, and all of these trains might be Amtrak trains. These little posters, I'm not going to nitpick them. They're actually quite accurate, because what they'll do is they'll have signs for trains, and they'll have like summer programs where it's like, hey, if you buy a ticket, or like if you take this train, then you might enjoy this location. So yeah, this doesn't. What the fuck? I did not know this was a thing. New Widowmaker spot, I guess. Please don't do this in my games. I will actually crush out on you. So this is all just incredibly interesting. Ah, shit, I fucked up my jump. Yeah, I fucked up my jump. Hold on. So over here, we can see there are sort of like more tracks. Okay, yeah. So there are obviously like more tracks and whatnot. Oh god, that's a horrifying sound. Oh, I need to get back up there. There are more tracks and stuff behind this one. Can't really see them from. So this is incredibly interesting to me. However, we don't get to see any tracks on the actual maps, and any mentions of a train, like, for example, Toronto, they kind of just, you kind of just get ran over by it. And that would have been nice to see, like, an out-of-bounds thing here in Grand Central Terminal, where there are meant to be trains. Like, you could get, like, out of bounds, like, over in this part. Like, there's a train right here. And, like, you could have sort of a King's Row situation where the tracks are incorporated into the map, and they're sort of like obstacles you have to avoid basing on your positioning. And it is just like a sort of thing in general where it's like, you know, a lot of the entrances don't make any sense. This tells you to go through here, and then it just ends. There's no train station. This in general, you know, Toronto, King Jerome, Monte Carlo, Blizzard World. I don't know why there's a train serving specifically an amusement park. But yeah. It also tells you to enter here for entry to the 7, 4, 5, and 6. However, this is very clearly a train. And if you try to go past the train, you die because there are a bunch of tracks there. I could not imagine commuting in this. Like, this is some people's daily lives, and if it looked exactly how it does in here, like in this world, then I would not be able to commute at all. I tend to use Grand Central sometimes if I find myself in Manhattan. And I'll take the Long Island Railroad. But just like trying to commute through a Grand Central terminal. Also, this sign could not exist at all. Because Grand Central Terminal is a historically protected monument. Hey, wait a minute. I just realized. Did they demolish the... In this universe, apparently, the MetLife building never fucking existed, I guess. Because, to the way it would look in real life... I'll just put a picture. That's how Grand Central Terminal is supposed to look. So they fucking demolished the MetLife building that's supposed to be right here. Obviously, we can kind of just say MetLife went out of business, but even then, the building should still be standing. You wouldn't nuke it off the face of the fucking earth. What's this? Also, wait a minute. I just realized now, obviously for gameplay's sake. No. I just realized. This is supposed to be a road. This is supposed to be a road. I don't... I guess in this universe... I can't even fucking say it. That's such a stupid fucking idea to even think of. The MTA in any universe would never be this commuter friendly. Or even the Department of Transportation. But like, this is supposed to be a road. I just realized. It's not even a road in this universe. It would be interesting if you had to like position around the cars. Like, obviously you have cars here and you have cars here. And say like your Widowmaker is positioned here. Like, she has to be careful and be more aware of her surroundings, because if she like walks backwards, she's gonna get hit by a car. The cars don't have to move as fast as they do on like New Bonnie, but like, I'm sorry, I just don't like Widowmakers. I feel like we should give them some form of a way to actually be spatially aware of their surroundings. Otherwise, they're just gonna sit there and look at you the whole game. But yeah, this was just like a whole nitpick on this version of New York. This is also specifically East Midtown, not just Midtown. Midtown is like 5th Avenue to, I think, 9th or 10th, and then after 9th or 10th, that's where Hell's Kitchen is. Yeah. But this is fun to look around, you know, the little things you don't get to see when you're like in an actual match. The little details they added. I do appreciate the fact that they tried to get some stuff right. But they did wrong in so many other parts. But yeah, this was enjoyable. I'm gonna like end it here, just me as you know. kicking this street lamp as my express anger to Blizzard for fucking up New York City. And one more thing before I actually end this out. I noticed while looking through the map that the streets aren't in a grid. And New York, above Houston Street, is completely gridded. So the streets are always going to perfectly line up with one another until you get to Broadway, where it cuts through diagonally. So these streets don't continue past where they're supposed to, and they sort of just end randomly, and the grid is completely put off. And that is the one thing that annoys me the most. The grid isn't consistent. There is no grid. It's not symmetrical, it's not perfect, and they got rid of most of the streets. And that is the most irritating thing about this. But officially over. Bye bye.